Can you imagine what she felt? Here's what she said, quote, "What kind of city is this? No one helped my child? Someone could have helped him. Someone could have turned him over on his side to help him breathe. It's a nightmare I will never recover from. He wasn't in a gang. He didn't know anyone here. I saw the video, and when I saw it, I walked out of the room. It will be forever engraved in my memory. I saw my child fall on the floor, and no one tried to help him." I have asked you this recently. Who are we turning into? We are turning into a nation of people that are afraid. We are turning into a people, we have never been a nation that had a problem with charity and compassion. We always have been that, and now it seems we videotape until help arrives. When did we become the help arrives people? We're always the help, not the people standing around. What is happening to us? We are losing the common bond of love and courage. That's what's missing in all of these stories. People don't get beat over syrup, or they don't get a wayward glance to a boyfriend and then go into a seizure because they've been kicked in the head, or die because they picked the wrong corner to stand on, and then they die alone. If you have love, if you have compassion, if we actually care about one another, we can't keep pitting ourselves against each other. It doesn't mean we don't turn over the tables once in a while. It doesn't mean we don't point out what's wrong. It means we stand up, and yet we have compassion. Courage to stand. And courage has many different forms. Before 8/28, here's what the Black Panthers said of us meeting on the mall at the Lincoln Memorial.
For him to go and to secure the Lincoln Memorial on Dr. King's birthday will meet not only opposition from civil rights leaders, but it's going to meet direct opposition from the new Black Panther Party. Since the Tea Party loves Glenn Beck and will be there, the new Black Panther Party can easily find the Tea Party right with Glenn Beck. And so he can bring his Tea Party and we'll bring our party.
They tried to frighten you. It was an act of courage. With the threat of trouble, thousands, dare I say at CBS, hundreds of thousands came with their families and children. Courage begins with the individual. Everyone in that crowd started out like Scott Moore, packing, getting ready to go. I showed you a video last night of a German woman standing up to radical Islamists preaching hate in Germany. She stood up and she said, "I am ashamed because no one would say anything. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that someone could stand here and speak like Hitler. Where is everybody? Why are people not standing up in this country of ours?" That is courage. A woman all by herself, yelling at her countrymen. I received a phone call on radio a few days ago that I think I will cherish for a very long time. She is a woman that said that she had heard me say "stand up" on TV and radio a million times. She almost got to the point of rolling her eyes when I would say it. Stand up. She thought to herself, I know, I'll stand up. I'll stand up. I'm courageous. Well, she went to Chicago and she attended one of the recent stage shows that I did. And I was talking about courage and a willingness to stand. And I said, there's going to come a time when you're going to know, stand. Now, I didn't tell her to stand up, but she heard in herself, I should stand up. Well, she didn't. She was too worried about what others would think or how they would react. So she didn't stand. She called me. It was after the weekend. She called me that first Monday and apologized to me. She said, I'm sorry, I thought I was courageous, and there I was in a room full of people that I trusted, and I didn't do it. She said, I will never ignore that again. This is the part I cherish. Courage is a muscle. She learned. She's got to exercise it. Personal courage is going to be required in the coming months and years. Maybe more from you, or maybe more from your children. And there will be every excuse not to stand. You might lose a job, your pension, your friends. What will your family say? Your union. Can you stand up against your union? It'll be tougher for my kid if I speak out. Whatever the excuse is. And before you say, it's not going to be tougher. Really? I'm not the one who predicted. These guys predicted that it would fall apart in the end. I'm going to show you by the end of the hour this book. This book is The Holy Experiment. What is the Holy Experiment? The Holy Experiment is, can man rule himself? Can he rule himself? The answer is yes, he can, but not without two things. Love for one another, and that includes the truth, and courage. I go back to the guy visiting from South Carolina that was here in New York. We all have a role in the end. We all have a role to play. In the end, will we be the person that comforts and teaches others to comfort, or the person that missed the opportunity to teach courage and find ourselves alone, lying on the ground? I brought in two friends that can speak on a couple of different people of real courage, and one of them is Eric Metaxas. He is the author of Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Martyr, Prophet, Spy, and Dinesh D'Souza, president of King's College and author of The Roots of Obama's Outrage, or Obama's Rage. Both are books that you should read and have and pass on to others. Let me start with you. Dietrich Bonhoeffer has become a hero of mine, mainly because of your book.
Would you recommend the book?
Yeah. Yes. He's become a hero of mine because he was amazingly courageous. Was he that kind of guy, or are people like that born that way, or are they made?
A little bit of both. Bonhoeffer was raised in, and of course I assume all of your viewers have already read the book, so I'm just going to...
Yeah.
But basically, he was born into an amazing family. I mean, in the book I go into the family because you can hardly believe what an amazing family is. They were trained, these kids, to think clearly, to figure out what you believe, and then to act on it. And if you don't act on it, you're a hypocrite. You don't really believe it. It's an amazing thing that they were trained this way. So he was raised in a family this way. But of course, when the Nazis came to power, things changed, because suddenly now you had to live this. And he really, I think it came principally from his faith. He was a devout Christian. The word courage, ironically, is French, and it means heart, right? To have heart, to be a person of integrity, to know who you are, what you believe, and then to act out of that, not to have any daylight between what you say you believe and how you behave.
And I find it interesting that it is people that he was raised in that family. And that's why I said in the opening monologue that when you're at school, and this happened between my wife and I, we'll be driving home and she'll have not said something, or I have not said something and said, oh, I would have made things worse. Our children are listening and they hear that. That's not training them to be people of courage. Now, Bonhoeffer wanted to meet Gandhi. He thought Gandhi had the answer. But Dinesh, you don't think that in that particular case, Gandhi would have worked?
Well, Gandhi had a different situation. The British were very different than Hitler. They were tyrannical in that they were ruling India. But Gandhi's strategy, which was nonviolence, mass protest, lying down in front of the train tracks, very dramatic. But if Hitler had been in power, the trains would have kept going.
Right.
One of my professors at Dartmouth used to say, if Hitler was in power in India, Gandhi would be a lampshade. It's kind of a harsh way of putting it, but he would have dealt with Gandhi. Right. So Gandhi knew that, and he developed a strategy aimed at producing, you might say, the repentance of the tyrant. In other words, Gandhi was out to convince the British that they were wrong, and he knew that he could do that by appealing to Western principles. So Gandhi's ideas of nonviolence did not so much come out of Hinduism. They came out of Christianity and out of British.
Okay, and so that's why Bill Ayers failed here in the 1960s when they were blowing things up, because America is not Nazi Germany.
Exactly.
Right?
The Martin Luther King strategy, which was derived from Gandhi, which appealed to American goodness. When King said, I'm submitting a promissory note, he was referring to the Declaration of Independence.
America, please, did you just hear that? Did you just hear that? It is the Martin Luther King model, and that's why they're destined to lose. They're destined to lose because they're still using thuggish force, and that doesn't work. They're mocking, they're imitating Martin Luther King's movement here in America. They're thuggish behind, so they're destined to lose. Now, this is also why Bonhoeffer, in the end, flipped, because he came into it as a pacifist.
Right.
In the end, he was the guy that was plotting Hitler's death.
And it wasn't just a calculation on his part. I think it needs to be said in the case of Bonhoeffer, and I think in all our cases, Bonhoeffer would say you have to have a relationship with God, a personal relationship, because at some point principles and ideas are empty. In other words, you say, well, what do we apply here? What do we apply here? He made a calculation as the Nazis became more powerful. He said, God is leading me into getting involved in this conspiracy against Hitler. If he didn't feel God was leading him to do that, he wouldn't have done it. And because he believed God was leading him to do this, he had the courage. He didn't care what people thought. There were people around him, people he respected, who looked down their noses at him. They thought, what are you doing? You're Mr. Pacifist, Mr.
Right.
Anti-Nazi, now you're working for the Abwehr. It didn't make any sense. He was playing to an audience of one, and that was God. That's important to say.
There are two very distinct paths. Gandhi's is the right path, and for this nation, Bonhoeffer understood that at the beginning, but was in the wrong setting. Please read these men, and read about these men as much as you can. First, the books, again, that you must read is The Roots of Obama's Rage and Bonhoeffer by Eric Metaxas. Be careful on the Bonhoeffer books. Make sure you get that one, because the left has tried to co-opt and distort him, and Eric has said it right. Back in just a second.